Things can be replaceable, but life cannot.
Hurricane Milton's deadly march through Florida. The destruction, the rescues.
It's okay. You're okay.
Why the storm spawned so many tornadoes and where Milton is headed now. Also on this Thursday night, new accusations against Israel. The evidence UN peacekeepers are being targeted in Lebanon. Record high fine, TD Bank's punishment in a money laundering case. And a classically trained Canadian canine.
He'll go up to the piano multiple times a day and press the pedals.
The dog that loves eating treats and listening to beats.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Hundreds of rescues are underway in Florida and neighborhoods flooded by Hurricane Milton. Teams have been using boats to go house to house. And in the ocean, a Coast Guard helicopter rescued this man who was spotted clinging to a cooler about 50 kilometers off Longboat Key in Sarasota. In the Tampa Bay area, this boy was clinging to a piece of fence when he was rescued. On top of the storm surge, some areas in the Tampa Bay area got more than 45 centimeters of rain in a matter of just hours. Hundreds of homes are destroyed, roads damaged, and power and water knocked out to millions of people.
There's still very dangerous conditions in the state, and people should wait to be given all clear by their leaders before they go out. We know from previous hurricanes that it's often the case that more lives are lost the days following the storm than actually during the storm itself.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. At least 13 deaths have been confirmed, but the death toll is expected to rise as the search and rescue goes on. The storm surge that hit Tampa wasn't as bad as feared, but the unprecedented outbreak of tornadoes was what no one predicted. Florida has never been hit by so many in a single day. The National Weather Service says 126 tornado warnings were issued yesterday. At least 19 of them touched down, some of them in St. Lucie County. Jackson Proskow begins our coverage from there tonight. Jackson.
Donna, no one was expecting to see damage like this so far away from the storm's projected path. The roof of this gas station was ripped right off by a tornado, and there were dozens of them that broke out yesterday before the hurricane made landfall. They caused some of the biggest damage and loss of life, and tonight the race is on to clean up and figure out who is still missing.
Floridians expected hurricane damage. What they got was one of the worst tornado outbreaks in state history. Nobody saw it coming, especially not the seniors in the Spanish Lakes Country Club in Fort Pierce. They didn't stand a chance in their manufactured homes. At least 3 tornadoes hit the county in 25 minutes, traveling clear across the interstate and bringing down this sprawling police garage. Dozens of other twisters spun out of Milton's outer bands.
I saw it coming right towards our house. It was like watching the movie Twister, and you could see the debris field through it.
At landfall south of Sarasota, Milton was a powerful Category 3 storm, shifting course just enough to spare Tampa from a feared once-in-a-generation disaster.
The storm was significant, but thankfully this was not the worst-case scenario.
Milton's winds shredded the fabric roof of Tropicana Field in St. Petersburg. The 40,000-person venue was supposed to be a base camp for first responders and cleanup operations. The winds also brought down a construction crane and toppled a tree onto a home where 15 people were sheltering. Morning brought high water rescues along the Gulf Coast.
It's the second time she's been rescued. We just did this a couple years ago, so we're kind of used to it. There you go, of course.
In the Tampa area, sheriff staff were handing out food, water, and blankets to seniors displaced from their living facility. And near Orlando, extremely heavy rainfall caused flash flooding.
You got neighborhoods that have plants and trees in their front yard that only grow in swamps. It shouldn't be there if it's high, dry land.
At peak, more than 3 million people were without power. But for the millions who fled Milton's path, the worst is now over. They're returning home to assess the damage.
Even before Milton made landfall, Florida was anticipating a massive relief and recovery effort. Tonight, thousands of members of the National Guard are being deployed along with utility workers from as far away as eastern Canada. And with gasoline in short supply, fuel trucks are moving under police escort to the hardest hit areas. Donna?
Okay, Jackson Proskow in Fort Pierce, Florida. Thanks. As Jackson said, this place took a hit. Tropicana Field is home to baseball's Tampa Bay Rays. It had been turned into a shelter for first responders. It was set up for about 10,000 people. This is after the storm hit. Milton's powerful winds shredded the roof. It was made of nearly 2.5 hectares of translucent Teflon-coated fiberglass, supported by 290 kilometers of cables, believed to be the world's largest cable-supported domed roof. It was designed to withstand winds of up to 185 kilometers per hour. Another issue may be water damage. Built in the late 1980s, the stadium has no drainage system. Even before the hurricane, there were dozens of eyewitness reports about those tornadoes across Florida. At least 19 have been confirmed by the National Weather Service. Others are still being investigated. Tornadoes can be more unpredictable and just as deadly as hurricanes. Eric Sorensen looks at why this storm spawned so many.
Oh, violent tornado, violent.
Not as big as a hurricane, but often faster. And in small areas, the winds from a tornado can be even more destructive than a Category 5 storm. In seconds, a tornado can blow buildings apart.
These tornadoes came out of nowhere.
It sounded like a car crash.
You could feel the pressure of the house on top of it, and audibly the whistling and force coming down.
Tornadoes are usually associated with Midwestern thunderstorms, but with lightning strikes visible from space, clearly the right ingredients exist in a hurricane too. When a hurricane's outer bands hit land, the friction creates winds at different speeds and directions between the surface and higher in the atmosphere. That causes spinning columns of air that can turn into tornadoes.
Sometimes those ingredients come together just right, and you can get over 100 tornadoes that occur with these things.
This expert says tornadoes have an added danger. They come with little warning.
With a hurricane, sometimes you have many days of notice that it's coming your way. But with these tornadoes, the target lead time for a tornado is only 10 to 15 minutes. So very different scales.
At one point, desperate Floridians had conflicting messages: to leave as Hurricane Milton approached and to shelter in place as tornadoes developed before the hurricane arrived. Almost too many meteorological hazards to count.
When that tropical cyclone hits, you have heavy precipitation, often storm surges and flooding. And then if you have tornadoes on top of that, it creates this compound impact on mortality.
Florida seldom sees powerful twisters. But this time the state will have to rebuild from severe wind damage from both Hurricane Milton and its tornadoes. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
Milton is now a post-tropical cyclone and still has the power to flood parts of the southeastern U.S. coast. Global News meteorologist Ross Hull tracked this hurricane closely. Ross, what stood out to you?
Well, Donna, what stood out to me was just how quickly this storm intensified as it moved through those very warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico, quickly becoming a Category 5 hurricane, the second most powerful hurricane on record in this basin. And of course, what we also look at is the track of the storm. That was key in terms of which areas experienced storm surge. Tampa got flooding rains. There was freshwater flooding, but not the storm surge we expected. There was some storm surge, not the amounts that were possible, up to 15 feet or 4.5 meters, but there was storm surge to the south of the track. Why? Well, the center of the storm, the eye, moved in this direction here towards the coast, of course. Counterclockwise winds on the northern side of the eye brought all of that water out of Tampa Bay. There's actually a reverse storm surge out of the bay, whereas farther south, you can see here around Sarasota, Punta Gorda, those waters moved onshore with the storm surge. The storm now well offshore, no impacts in terms of its remnants for eastern Canada, but Donna, the Atlantic hurricane season still has a ways to go with those very warm waters in the Gulf of Mexico. It doesn't end until November 30th. Donna?
Okay, Global News meteorologist Ross Hull, thanks.
It's okay.
People aren't the only ones needing rescue. Some animals were left to ride out the storm on their own. A highway patrol officer in Tampa rescued this bull terrier found tied to a fence post. And a news crew went above and beyond after someone walking by their vehicle heard the plaintive cries of a cat. It had taken shelter under their car trying to escape the hurricane. The crew managed to grab it and are keeping the cat safe, warm, and dry. Israel's military has hit central Beirut, killing at least 22 people and wounding more than 100. That's according to Lebanon's health ministry. 2 residential buildings in densely populated Beirut neighborhoods were hit. There are reports Israel was targeting at least one senior Hezbollah member. Israel has not commented. Its military has launched frequent strikes on Beirut's southern suburbs, where Hezbollah bases many of its operations, but strikes in central Beirut are rare. The UN peacekeeping mission in southern Lebanon says an Israeli tank deliberately fired on its headquarters, and it's accusing Israel of violating international law. As well, a UN Commission of Inquiry is accusing Israel of carrying out a concerted policy to destroy Gaza's healthcare system. Redmond Shannon reports on what is pushing relations between the UN and Israel to a new low.
Smoke rising from an area near the United Nations Peacekeeping Force headquarters in southern Lebanon, a region where Israel launched a new phase of its ground incursion against Hezbollah this week. On Thursday, the UN force UNIFIL said 2 peacekeepers were injured after an Israeli tank fired its weapon toward an observation tower. It added that yesterday IDF soldiers deliberately fired at and disabled the position's perimeter cameras. The UN force called the incident
a violation of international humanitarian law.
UNIFIL was established as a peacekeeping buffer in southern Lebanon in 1978.
They are officially under international humanitarian law classified as civilians because the role they're playing there is not a combat role.
Ray Murphy served with UNIFIL in the 1980s.
I couldn't emphasize how dangerous the situation has become if UN forces are being deliberately targeted.
Israel's UN envoy responded Thursday saying Israel recommends UNIFIL moves 5 kilometers north to avoid danger. Israel is also threatening to outlaw the operations of the UN's Palestinian Relief Agency over accusations Hamas members have worked for them, and it has banned the UN's Secretary General Antonio Guterres from visiting Israel. Years of bad relations strained further Thursday by a new UN report which accuses Israel of war crimes in Gaza, saying it implemented a concerted policy to destroy the healthcare system of Gaza. It said Israel deliberately killed, wounded, arrested, detained, mistreated and tortured medical personnel. Gaza health officials say that on Wednesday, Israel gave patients and medics 24 hours to leave 3 hospitals in northern Gaza, including this one. Doctors say there is nowhere safe for patients to go. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
In central Gaza, an Israeli strike on a school sheltering displaced people has killed at least 27, including a child and 7 women. The Israeli military says it was targeting militants. People sheltering there say the strike hit a meeting of aid workers. A Canadian bank is being forced to pay up. Coming up, the staggering fine against TD and what's behind it. One of Canada's big 5 banks, TD, has agreed to pay about $3 billion in fines to the U.S. after pleading guilty to money laundering. It's the largest penalty ever imposed by U.S. authorities on a bank for violating anti-money laundering laws. Federal prosecutors in the U.S. say TD made it convenient for criminals to open accounts, transfer funds, and deposit large sums of cash at its branches. Part of the combined penalties include an asset cap, preventing TD from growing any bigger than it is now. The U.S. Justice Department has also charged 2 TD Bank employees for their involvement in one of 3 money laundering schemes. They're accused of taking bribes and overlooking criminal activity by customers from countries, including Colombia. A Quebec man who admitted to setting 14 forest fires in that province's north during the summer of 2023 has been sentenced to 8 years in prison. One of the fires set by Brian Paré forced the evacuation of an entire town. Hundreds of people had to leave their homes. The judge said a serious sentence was needed because of the damage to the forests and the trauma inflicted on those residents. Canadian singer Jacob Hogarth has dropped his bid to challenge his 2022 sexual assault conviction before the Supreme Court. The 40-year-old was found guilty of sexual assault causing bodily harm in the case against an Ottawa woman. He's serving a 5-year sentence. He discontinued his application to appeal last week, the same day he was found not guilty of sexual assault in a separate, unrelated case. That is the mother of Sean Diddy Combs and the rapper's children walking into a New York courtroom today. Combs made his first court appearance since being arrested on charges of racketeering, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution. The judge set a trial date of May the 5th. Combs has pleaded not guilty. The princess in public ahead, Kate's first engagement after finishing her chemo treatment. A South Korean writer has won the Nobel Prize for Literature, a first for that country. Han Kang was honored for what the Nobel Committee calls her intense poetic prose that confronts historical traumas and exposes the fragility of human life. She started her career in 1993 with a series of poems and is best known for her novel The Vegetarian, the first of her books to be translated into English. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is in Laos meeting with leaders of Southeast Asian nations. He's pushing for stronger ties with the Indo-Pacific partners at the ASEAN summit. His first day focused on international trade, but global security issues are also on the table. David Aiken is traveling with the Prime Minister. David.
Well, Donna, there are 10 members of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, and today Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had one-on-one meetings with the leaders of about half of them. Trade was the common theme. ASEAN nations combined are Canada's fourth largest trading partner, and both sides want more.
What they see as an opportunity to work with Canada is a partnership in trade that will actually help grow their economies.
Canada said it will open full embassies here in Laos and in Cambodia, while Trudeau promised to champion ASEAN issues next year when Canada hosts the G7.
Prime Minister of Australia and Prime Minister of New Zealand.
Leaders from other non-ASEAN countries are also here to strengthen trade ties, and Trudeau met with some of them, including the Prime Ministers of Australia and New Zealand. The three Prime Ministers spent some time discussing security issues, including the Middle East conflict.
We are like-minded and pushing for de-escalation of the violence, protection of civilians, and humanitarian aid flowing in.
We also have an important role to play in national security, and we there again share our support for democratic values.
And then there's China. All three countries have been targets of Chinese foreign interference, Chinese trade sanctions, Chinese cyber espionage. And so today, during their near hour-long meeting, all three PMs talked about how they can collectively address the China challenge. Donna?
All right, David Aiken in Laos, thanks. The Princess of Wales made her first public appearance today since completing chemotherapy. Kate Middleton and Prince William were in Southport, England. They met with first responders and some of the families of the three young girls killed in a knife attack at a Taylor Swift-themed dance class in July. 10 other people were injured. A 17-year-old boy has since been charged with murder. Kate has been easing back into public engagements. In March, she announced she'd been diagnosed with cancer and underwent preventative chemotherapy. Forget begging for treats. Next, the dog who begs for music. If you thought you were good at training your dog, wait for this story. It's about a dog from Vancouver who is fast becoming a classical music connoisseur after he was adopted by music buffs. Neethu Garcha met the dog striking a chord with both music and animal lovers.
Go boy.
Meet Billy, a 2.5-year-old shepherd mix who has an ear,
piano,
and a paw for music.
He'll go up to the piano multiple times a day and press the pedals, or even go to Luce's violin case or viola case and press on it.
After being adopted from a Texas rescue farm by musician couple Teresa Bose and Luce Bars, Billy quickly discovered his love for Ludwig.
He just reacts so well to it.
After that, as they say, roll over Beethoven.
Yes, piano.
His passion for classical music is now capturing hearts and attracting followers online.
It's been really surprising. We didn't expect it to grow this much.
He even communicates with these specially designed buttons. It's no Steinway, but it does help Billy share everything from his love for music to his desire for snacks.
Oh, hungry.
He went to the buttons shortly after I played some piano for him, and he said, "Love you, sound."
With his love for the sound, practice time has become a family affair. Billy sits front and center, mostly at ease, sometimes with his tail wagging, a bit like a conductor's baton. And it's not just at home Billy is front and center. He was recently invited to a rehearsal with the Vancouver Metropolitan Orchestra thanks to a friend who happens to be the concertmaster.
Tried not to get our hopes too high because he might just scare and run away and bother everyone.
But Billy was the picture of sophistication, even donning a little tuxedo.
He was laying down, kind of relaxing and listening. It seems like he enjoyed it.
As Billy's fame grows, his humans are recognizing their musical partnership may soon be a trio.
As a musician, that's kind of our role in a way, is to bring peace or, smiles into people's lives.
Proof that whether you prefer the symphony, Steppenwolf, or Snoop Dogg, music truly is a universal language.
Piano.
Neetu Garcha, Global News, Vancouver.
What a good boy. That is Global National for this Thursday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is the historic Chateau Frontenac Hotel in Quebec City. We'd love to see your Canada. Please email it to globalnational@globalnews.ca. And thanks for watching. Carolyn Jarvis will be at the anchor desk tomorrow, and I will see you again next week. Bye-bye.